Welcome, guys. Today we're doing a deep dive on taking back our emotional power. Really, the world runs on human energy, and our emotions are a big part of how that energy gets produced and directed. This is really our spiritual currency, and we each need to know how we're spending and investing it. And if you've been through trauma, particularly psychological abuse, the truth is you've likely been conditioned to spend your emotional energy in ways that leave you impoverished. Let's change that. If we haven't met, I'm Jennifer, and everything on this channel is here to be an accessible educational resource for those recovering from complex trauma and long-term survival stress. So thanks for being here for it. Let's get started. What they don't want you to know about your emotional power. But first, who exactly are they? These people who don't want you to know things, that want you emotionally disempowered. It sounds so conspiratorial, and it could be, because can anyone still alive in 2026 deny that there are individuals and groups who conspire to maintain their own interests? The ship of denial has officially sailed. Really, we're just using whatever lens applies to your life the most. They could be a group. It could be one person. For the sake of our discussion, they is anyone who feels their place in the world, their identity hinges on keeping undue influence over others. And trust me when I say they have already figured out emotions are a way to direct attention and action and to pull or collapse individual power. Again, sometimes it's the controlling or manipulative individual who's just pulling all the attention to themselves. Everyone walks on eggshells around them. The energy goes out to managing their volatility or earning their love and approval. That's probably the most common situation that people who are watching this video have been through. It can also be a guru or a social group or a power structure that functions in the same manner. The control can be overt or violent, or covert and psychological. If you study traumatizing narcissists, narcissistic systems of control, cults, emotional manipulation is a huge part of how they maintain their narrative, get people to put up with their crap, and do their bidding. This is not a video about diagnosing personality disorders or labeling groups. It's just about recognizing the structure of what we're dealing with. When the structure itself of a relationship or group dynamic is narcissistic, it relies on us offering our energy to maintain it, not as individuals with separate wants and needs or opinions, but as a thing. You become a thing that serves the structure, whether it is propping up the ego of one damaged person or keeping lockstep with a system of control. In either situation, our attention is directed outward. Our energy is devoted to maintaining the stability of something that is at its core very unstable. In return, we get a sense of love, safety, and belonging, but in a way that's very conditional. So if you pull back your energy or you push back in some way, you will feel that structure getting very shaky. And you might notice some of the emotional control tactics that we're going to go over in a sec being employed to get you the heck back in line. First, what is so powerful about emotions? As we're slowly coming out of the old cultural soup that said emotions are soft and weak, or perhaps that was showing them as hysterical and unhinged and bitchy, and that feeling big things meant you were self-centered, difficult, or too much. This paradigm was, on some level, even if it sounds conspiratorial to you, it was a purposeful separation of us from our intuition and our fierce protective energy. Our matriarchal human power, the lioness, the mama bear. We don't physically have those animal strength, but there is definitely power in the human mother's love and anger. And when we look at archetypal imagery, which I like to do here, we see the power of intuition fully developed in the healer, the oracle, the wise woman, the crone. That disrespect for emotion and separation from our embodied wisdom has shaped the power structures that we see today. It's not only about women's power. This is social conditioning that hurts all of us in different ways. And I am speaking from a woman's perspective because that's what I know. And women are very familiar with the unspoken rules on emotional expression. Tone it down. Don't look crazy. Be careful about calling anybody out. It made our natural boundaries feel unsafe. Meanwhile, our empathy and nurturing got labeled as too soft. The natural process of mind, body, and soul healing was suppressed as culturally we really couldn't tolerate the grief process anymore. People became scared of coming undone or even just seeing tears in another human. We also started to medicate our most precise and potent emotional messages and to rush people through life's difficult initiations. Really, this is all loss of emotional power and wisdom on a mass scale. Along with all of this, most people have lost touch with what their bodies are trying to tell them. Often, what our bodies are saying is to do something, to take some sort of action. This is part of the natural sequence of emotional processing. To borrow a term from Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen, who is the founder of Body Mind Centering, we have this emotional sequence of sensing, feeling, and action. So we sense what's happening in the world around us, and our nervous systems respond, and they trigger a chemical cascade of reactions in the body. So really, when we feel emotions, we are feeling the chemical peptides in our systems. Those chemical reactions are creating energy to mobilize us or immobilize us and to impel us to take some action, to move towards something we want or away from something we don't. I'm simplifying this for the moment, but in many ways, it is simple. We've forgotten that there's a purpose to our feelings, our emotions. Now, say you're dealing with one of those controlling people or systems we just talked about. If your body's inner compass is healthy and tuned to the present, and you have a clear communication system going where all the parts are in play, the mind, the heart, the gut, the womb, your soul, all working together to provide you accurate feedback on what's happening, you will quickly get a sense of reality and get the fully embodied message that these people do not have your best interests at heart, and you will be impelled to take action to remove yourself out of their reach. On the other hand, as is often the case, if you've been highly conditioned by the culture to be nice, compliant, put others' feelings before your own, or you've endured psychological abuse, manipulation. Maybe you were raised by a traumatizing narcissist and your entire system had to develop and organize around that. Maybe your emotions were shamed. Maybe you had to constantly orient yourself to what someone else was feeling at your own expense. So, in these instances, having your emotional power hijacked or turned against you kind of feels normal, and it might feel more dangerous to consider yourself or to feel big things or to use your power for your own good. All of that is very confusing to our perception, and it makes us hesitate to take action in our own interest to protect ourselves. So, tuning into our emotional messengers and growing in capacity and skill to assess reality accurately means we have to sort out what's actually going on inside of us and figure out what in our present is being distorted by conditioning and unintegrated events from the past. I call this calibrating the compass, and in my programs they're called the heroine's compass, and we work on it with the archetype of the heroine, and it is indeed a full mind, body, soul process. And again, they don't want you to do that, but we're doing it anyways and on a grand scale because there are a lot of people doing this work, and it is paradigm shifting because it's how we find our power and get clarity and agency to act on it. The more of us do that, the better off we all are. For today, let's tear apart some of these tactics these people tend to use because when we can see the emotional manipulation clearly, we can make better decisions on how to disengage with wisdom. Because people like this, they have a lot of practice. Some of them have been doing it their whole lives, right? They may not know the biology or psychology of manipulation and control, they just know what works, right? But guess what? People who have been manipulated and mind controlled know what works too. And when we recover, we're their worst nightmare. Simply because when we remove our energy, the individual or system that was feeding off it has to find another source or restructure, and they don't like that very much. But oh well. So, number one power sucking tactic that can be so very subtle is introducing confusion. Our brains hate being confused. When you are trying to sort out conflicting information, it often pulls you away from your body's wisdom. So maybe their arguments sound very logical, but they're also confusing because now you're wondering if maybe your understanding or your memory is off, or you're overreacting, or you just weren't trying hard enough, or maybe they're just trying to help you. And so you find yourself again unhooking from your own emotional felt sense, suppressing the impulse to take action. And yeah, you're just in your head questioning your intuition and whether you have the ability to accurately assess reality. And often your assessment was accurate. If confusion sounds familiar, maybe jot that word down, confusion, and take some time later to just tune into and contemplate, what does that feel like to you? How does it feel in your body? How do you respond to it? Do you try to escape in some way? Do you end up in your head and disconnected from your body and your emotions? Does your inner knowing get pushed aside? It's just about building some awareness because when we learn what something feels like, we can recognize it when it happens and we can practice pausing. And in that pause, we can choose a different response. So you can do that with any of these tactics. Just contemplate them later on. Our second tactic is emotional direction, which may look like telling you the right way to feel or the proper thing to have your emotions stirred about. So maybe they say things like, oh, don't we all feel this way? So then you're like wondering, is something wrong with me? Because no, I don't feel that way. That's not how I feel at all. This may especially be put in play when there's strong feelings about how you or others are being treated by them. They take your attention away from your internal compass that's whispering, this isn't right. And they make it about your wrong thought, feelings, and reactions. This could also look like redirecting attention to themselves as being the victim, or they may act shocked. How could you put your attention here when this clearly is more important? So that direction may involve hijacking your empathy and your innate goodness. There are so many ways in which this emotional direction could show up, but just notice if your feelings and concerns are being directed to shift somewhere they would not naturally go. Our third emotional control tactic may be an escalation of the last one, using guilt and shame. Sometimes it's subtle and sometimes not, but the message comes through that you're selfish or sinful or a bad citizen or a bad partner or something else. And maybe not even because of what you've done, but because of what you've felt. This doesn't always stop at just like, oh, how dare you be angry, or why aren't you over this yet? Some will condition you to view your personal desires, wants, needs, talents, callings as selfish, or at the very least disposable, because again, you're not an individual to them. You exist to serve their interests or the group's interests. All the while, they may be pushing your shame buttons, making you feel worthless, lacking, unlovable. Like maybe if you just try a little harder, you can earn your keep and be good enough. So toxic shame is that very penetrating feeling that something is wrong with me at the core of my being. And it is like pushing a self-destruct button. If there's something hurtful we're doing that we need to correct, it's good to have our conscience, right? And a felt sense of it in our bodies that says, oh, I literally feel terrible about that. I will not do that anymore. You can feel terrible and still know you are a lovable and worthy human with the power to choose something different in the future. But that toxic shame is a really different beast and it comes on quick and hard and it is a power collapsing emotion. Like it is just crushing you and you feel the juice draining out. Have you felt that? Yeah. So I think that really the difference between the healthy corrective guilt and the toxic self-destructive shame is that the latter capitalizes on us being separated from love. And so instead of correcting our issues, it pushes them into the shadows where they fester and suck our power without our awareness. And narcissists and systems of control will play that emotion of toxic shame and withdrawal of love like a freaking fiddle. The next manipulation tactic, and also a huge power drain, is fear, which is certainly linked to shame and separation from love, safety, and belonging. And it is also played like a fiddle in so many ways, cueing up our survival physiology. Sometimes the fear tactic involves pointing to someone else as the enemy or making you feel like you are in danger in some way if you don't think, feel, or act as they want you to, making you afraid of being abandoned. Another scenario might be pumping out information that fuels fear and helplessness, or even dread or shock or horror. And we see very recently that there's been a flood of horror released into the collective consciousness, like 3 million pages of it, I believe. And people are just trying to wrap their minds around it and being deeply affected, of course, because it's just the worst imaginable things and it's real. I personally learned about these things about a decade ago when information came out then, and I really wished in many ways I could just scrub it out of my psyche because it's so bad. When we see these things, that these feelings of powerlessness may arise and we wonder, how is this possible? What can we do? And it's like it is sucking our energy into this void of darkness. And in looking for some way to anchor ourselves, sometimes we just look for more information and diving deeper down the rabbit hole. But it's like the darkness has our attention and it's pulling more and more of our energy. And it's not that we want to deny that these things are happening, but there's a point, and it happens pretty quickly, where you know that's enough and you don't need to keep feeding yourself with horror. If we stay oriented to the fear and horror itself, specific details and actions of it, we can't simultaneously be orienting ourselves to love and nurturing and creating and healing and innovating and all these things that help us take back our power in every possible way without engaging in power struggles or feeding the darkness. We need all hands on deck, and we are making progress. We see so much awareness building around emotions, trauma biology, somatic psychology, the interpersonal dynamics, all of the things we're talking about here, and so much more. We as a collective are up-leveling our understanding very quickly. And yet we also see gaps because naturally, as we have become so disembodied and detached from our emotions and our felt sense, the language moves faster than the feeling it and the integration. It's like there ends up being a gap in the collective understanding. The language is everywhere. The understanding is pretty far behind. So in that little space between, that is where some can take the language and hijack it or twist it. And we also, of course, we just have well-meaning people who haven't developed their fully embodied understanding. Then we have this emotional manipulation tactic that can play into this, using healing language to offload responsibility for causing harm. Here's an example. In recent years, we hear a lot about feeling your feelings. Just drop into your body and feel what's there. I'm a somatic movement therapist. Like, I'm all about that. It can be a great place to start. but it's something that's often repeated without context or understanding of the biology of trauma and how dissociation works. Maybe an expectation is implied that you should just learn how to manage yourself better. Manage and fix your emotions. Go to your room, feel it, get it out, dry your tears, calm down, be done with it. And yes, again, there is value in sitting with your feelings and growing in your capacity to hold yourself through it as an adult. But it's something those same individuals or structures of control can use out of context to enforce emotional manipulation and to turn the tables on their victims. You could be perceiving reality very accurately. Your emotions match what's happening, and your body is basically screaming, "Get me out of here," because you are in an abusive, toxic soup. So you could try and sit with that and feel it until it goes away. You could drop into your body and feel it, and it will probably shift in 90 seconds, and then it'll come back again because you're circulating the chemicals of emotion without using their power to change something that's very wrong. And it will probably end up with you being more anxious and depressed. And maybe you can't change the thing right now. That's very real too, but we don't want to be gaslit or gaslight each other that somehow, if we just have proper emotional hygiene, we'd be able to continue to tolerate the same crap, right? The point is to get the messages and to take action, and it may take time. There are things we can do to manage in between, but just be aware that that could be a thing, that these healing words can be used against us, and we don't want that. Healing our feelings is complex for those with complex trauma histories, and we'll have more on that in the next video, more tools to help you with that. This brings us to another factor to be aware of. So we aren't leaking our emotional power. We can get addicted to feeling our emotional chemistry. None of us are immune to this. I've done it and I still catch myself at it sometimes. The intense feelings that we're circulating may not even feel good. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they feel bad, but it feels like something. And it reminds us of something that mattered and that still matters. We may keep running these same thought loops to trigger the chemical rush in our systems. We could do this for years and nothing will change, just stuck in the loop. And here's another aspect of that that's very tender, especially right now when, again, there's just a lot going on, right? I mean, there always has been, but it's very much at the surface right now. And there's a lot of people telling us, sometimes loudly, how we should think, feel, and respond. And this ties back to the tactic of directing. When we see this on a large scale, a group demand for outrage and response, it may be rooted in some societal system of control beyond what we're even aware of. You know, some of it is just frustrated people who are well-meaning, but they think if everyone saw and did things their way, that the world would change. Either way, whether it's well-meaning or not, directing others is a slippery slope. And when we're navigating emotional addiction, or we've numbed what's really happening deep inside of us, or we're conditioned and used to adjusting our emotions to match outside demands, like we just talked about, we can be quite vulnerable to having our energy pulled into that cyclical group outrage, which can obviously be focused on things that are legitimate and heartbreaking and concerning and need action. Yet, it's like we see the patterns of manipulation playing in. The feel your feelings message is present without context of how to metabolize and mobilize and contain. And then thrown into the same pot, we have the loud messaging of like, oh, wait, no, not those feelings. We will tell you the right feelings to have. And it's like we are temporarily granted the okay to feel something big and invited to scream into the void about it, right? And it's like there's this huge concentration of human emotional collective energy. And usually there's a lot of fear and rage in it, some hatred and division mixed in. And then something weird happens. Poof, it's gone. And besides perhaps some building of awareness, very little has actually changed. Whoosh, all that spiritual currency just sucked into the void. And then we're supposed to go back to numbness and or just having our energy redirected someplace else. Maybe you've noticed that and wondered why it happens. Well, I will give you the least esoteric and most empowering answer: to take action in ways that truly shift things and that shift things on a big collective level, our emotions have to be anchored, embodied, and coherent with earned wisdom and love. And that has to be happening in the individual. Our actions have to align with authentic self-expression of what's really inside of us. We have to have gone to see what's inside of us to know what that even is, to even be in touch with that. So someone outside of us cannot direct us in the right way to do that. It's not sustainable and it doesn't really truly affect change. And a lot of people are angry and feel helpless, and rightfully so. And when you think of it, anger is really in its most powerful, coherent form. It comes from love. It is that sacred force that arises when something precious must be protected. Mama bear energy, right? And when we feel fear and anxiety, it's often at its root because we aren't sure we have the adequate power to protect what is precious to us. These feelings are very personal. And when there's so many horrible things happening, we might feel guilty to even think of ourselves, but emotion is personal, and it has to be. It's personal to our stories, our wounds, who we are here to protect and serve, and what is precious within us that is meant to be an offering to the collective. So when we've suppressed that power within us, and then we see horrors and injustice, old feelings that were pushed under the surface during our own overwhelming experiences are activated again. And maybe it's underneath our conscious awareness. So it's like we're being bombarded with these very intense things from the present, along with messages of desperation and inequitable power dynamics. And that dredges up all the unintegrated survival energy from the past. And it is, again, shifting our perception of the present. Instead of first going inward to see what's alive within us, what answers are in our bodies, all the attention is going out and the energy is being pulled out, even when there's very little we can do. So it's like our personal messengers of change are diverted to something outside of our control. Doesn't mean you can't do anything to help humanity, but your action is going to be most powerful when it's anchored into what your soul came here to do, not what someone else tells you is the right thing to do right now. If you're not sure, love will point you in the right direction. Realize that sounds cheesy, but really it's the ultimate motivator, and it provides the fire we need to protect what is most precious. And we can't skip going inward and finding the wisdom in our own wound, extracting your very own medicine to bring to the collective that is rooted in your own experience. We want things to change, but it starts with our microcosms. A macrocosm cannot be healthy when it's made up of unhealthy microcosms. And when our microcosm is orbiting a narcissist or a narcissistic system, it becomes unhealthy because it's being impoverished and drained. And how you know you are in one is when you react differently than you usually do to any of those control tactics we went over. You stick to your guns on something important to you. See if love, safety, and belonging can survive your authenticity. And some of you already know you're in a situation where it's literally not safe to show your emotions or stand up for yourself. So use your wisdom in how you detach and when it is safe to do so, because that is the reality for some. We can't tell people just heal from trauma and regulate their emotions and nervous systems when they're still in the thing and they're really not safe. In any case, we are all learning and developing our ability to stand in our power, unmanipulatable. More and more of us are getting really good at that, right? And we've healed to where we can hold a coherent, energetic field, anchor in love. So action is needed, but as I've said before, fight is not a morally superior nervous system response. We need warriors, but we need sages and healers and mothers and grandmothers and visionaries too. We cannot be constantly activated in response to the whole world, or we will not move forward. We each carry a piece of the puzzle. When you take back your power and direct it to your place in the cosmology, you will feel so alive. You won't need to revisit those addictive emotional loops. You'll see right through the confusion. No one else will be able to shame or guilt you off your mission because you'll know what you are doing is important. In the meantime, if you're struggling with emotional addictions, being washed away by intense feelings, there are very personal messages there. I have a gift for you on my website, the Emotional Alchemy ebook. It's totally free. It's very easy things anyone can do to start getting in touch with your inner world and creating pathways of flow in your system. And it is purposefully simple to set a good foundation for doing some deeper work. I'm also going to be posting a masterclass version of Emotional Alchemy right here on YouTube. And another resource you'll find here is Story Medicine, which uses the ancient medicine of archetypal storytelling. And I combine that with modern understanding of psyche and trauma biology. So it's fun and it's deep and it's a little quirky all at once. And it will help you understand your responses to life so much clearer. I hope you will hang out for that. And thank you for being here. Let's continue to take back our power, feel what's real, and create something new together.